Okay, well, next up, I'm delighted to welcome Pierre-Adrien Erlet, who is head of Play Suisse at SRG SSR, and he's going to be interviewed by Annette Schaefer, the managing director at Big Picture, and they're talking about the strategy and technology that's driving Play Suisse.
Yeah, thank you, John, for the introduction. So after hearing about very successful SVOD and monetization around the globe, talk about a complete different market from a different perspective. Welcome, Pierre-Adrien. We talk about Switzerland today, or in this session, and in particular about the OTT strategy of a public broadcaster who has limitations in monetizing their content over OTT. Before we start talking about what SSR/SRG does with Play Suisse, I think we should talk a bit about Switzerland market specifics so that the audience get an idea what drives the market and who drives the market and what are the audience interested in.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, Switzerland has basically not the impressive figures that have been shown this morning. We are a country with 8 million population, divided in 4 languages, which makes it even very complex as a small country. And SRG is basically the BBC of Switzerland. So you have to imagine this public service broadcaster serving 4 sub-regional markets with regional languages. So we have the French-speaking part, accounting for 20% roughly of the population. You have the German-speaking part, accounting for over 70%. You have the Italian-speaking part, and Romanche, which is basically a smaller region as a dialect. So the way it's organized is SRG is the mothership, and we have regional broadcasters in every linguistic region. So the goal for Play Suisse was originally to build one platform for all of Switzerland, where as a license fee payer in the country, you would basically pay for your programming in your own region, but you would not enjoy the programming that you also pay from the other regions in the other languages. So the goal with Play Suisse was basically to bring down those linguistic barriers, those cultural barriers, and put together a national catalog where we would basically bring content from other regions to everyone in Switzerland. So you have to see a little bit Switzerland as a mini Europe, where you have one platform in many languages.
Yeah. And what are the key challenges in launching like an OTT platform for, multi-languages, but also, it's not a paid service, it's a subscription-based service. What are the key challenges for you when you started out? I think you started out 1.5, 2 years ago when you decided to bring the public broadcast content into an OTT platform?
Well, there's different challenges in launching a streaming service. I had the chance to basically start from zero. I was the first on board, and 18 months later, we have a team of 40 people dedicated to that service. We have multiple challenges, one of which is obviously the language and the subtitling. We're subtitling every single minute of what we put online in 3 languages. And that is not something we do on a huge budget. So subtitling thousands of titles, basically, we had to find solutions. We had to find solutions such as using speech-to-text, technology, automatic translation, then go through different processes and realizing that the quality was not as good as we expected. So we add layers of quality control and correction and so on. And we have now kind of a subtitling process that's combining technology and human translation correction within a very short time frame. And we're able basically to put out thousands of hours of subtitled content for a fraction of the price we used to do in the past. So that was one big challenge. Another one is obviously to establish a brand, a new brand in a country. Play Suisse is a totally new brand. So we had basically to explain that this is also a service that is not going to cost more for the users, because users are so used to paying subscription services like Netflix. So when we came with Play Suisse and said, well, it's like Netflix, but it's for Swiss content, and you don't have to pay for it because you pay the license fee already. So it's sort of already paid for, and it's very difficult to push that message because you have to uneducate the users about the way they basically, their relationship to a subscription service. And of course, we have the same challenges as everyone: user acquisition, retention. We have seasonality. We have all of these little challenges that other services have.
Talking about the user, what have you learned so far? I mean, besides being challenged by the communication, I can understand you have somebody who's paying already public license fee and all of a sudden has to learn that he can get all of the content that he's watching on public broadcasting now on over IP or streamed. But what have you learned from the audience about content, or what resonates well with the audiences? I mean, given the 4 languages is one, I think, a big challenge to translate and to dub everything, but what resonates best? We all think about, when we look at Europe in particular, that all the big streamers, and as Simon just showed about Disney and Netflix, that they will dominate the market. But what have you learned from launching a service in a 4-language country, and what users want, or what kind of users you get that subscribe to your services?
Well, what's been an incredible finding for us is that local content means so much for the audience. They used to have basically Netflix and Disney Plus and Sky and Apple and all those global services, and those services were basically related to international content, and none of these services were providing local content in a way that was meaningful for the people. We come in the picture, and in 18 months, we become number 2 subscription service in the country. We are number 2 after Netflix. We passed Disney Plus as a number of subscribers. In 18 months, we address over 10% of the population, of the active population. We have 500,000 subscribers in the service now. And that just tells how much people are craving for local content. So we are basically providing 99% of our content is produced in Switzerland. What works best is fiction series, and especially crime shows. Those are basically very, very successful. But other shows, some comedies have been big hits. We are seeing documentary films being very successful as well. We have a very large library of documentaries. And I think it's this crave for content, local storytelling, that we came to realize that we really have a place in that market, in that landscape. And that is a great thing, because as the audience is shifting from linear TV to subscription services, there was no alternative to Netflix and the big international players.
When you talk about audience shifting, what have you learned so far from the traditional, say, linear watching audiences? Do they make the transition to an OTT service, or is it is it hard to convince them, or is it for them hard to find not the content, but the how they subscribe to the service that they usually been using with the remote control, so to speak? Is it something you had to educate the audience on, especially, I would say, older?
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge for everyone, I think, for every service out there to cater to an audience that's used to the linear way of doing things, to the remote control and so on. So we're doing a lot of work by trying to, doing onboarding videos and trying to have a landing page that explains everything and so on. But in the end, even the older generation often is not that bad with technology, we realize. Even 70 plus users are sometimes, once the application is installed on their box or on wherever, they generally stick to it very much. And an interesting finding is we see that our usage on the big screen is twice as long as what we witness on other screens. So we are really making a push to increase our technical reach on the big screen. We're doing partnerships with telco and cable cos. We're trying to increase our technical reach on different hardware devices, boxes, connected TVs, and so on. And it's not an easy task. Because it's very difficult to understand for a user why Play Suisse is not on their connected TV, but is on Apple TV, and is not on that other box, but is on an Android box, and so on. And from our perspective, it's very difficult also to navigate all of these technologies and systems, despite all the great technical providers we have out there, of course.
Yeah, making the right choice and making the right investments, and given the fact that the market is somehow limited in reach, right? You can't really be on every device But what were the other challenges besides, I mean, it took convincing a public broadcaster to go OTT, but how long did it take you to go to market, and what would you, when you look back, what would you have done differently, or what are the key lessons that you learned so far from launching the service or being responsible for launching the service?
So we are today 36 months after I started this job, basically. So for the first 18 months, we built the concept and the platform. After 18 months, in November 2020, we launched Play Suisse in the market. And now, 18 months later, we're just crossed the 500,000 registered user mark. So it's been a very intense journey, and what we would have done differently, I mean, obviously, many things and not many things, because we're still a little bit in the hot phase. But I would say that, as a public broadcaster, the company is very, very risk averse. And when it comes to online services and shifting to an online service like Play Suisse, you have to break some rules if you want to be successful. You have to really push also some of the team members, especially on the legal side, to really change the culture, change also the time it takes to validate certain things traditionally, and just go faster and avoid certain roadblocks. So one very important thing I think that we have been trying hard to do and continue to do is to be output-oriented rather than outcome-oriented. We really try to align with our management on big strategic goals, and we try not to have them decide on which feature is going to serve that outcome. We decide on the outcome together, but it's on our team to decide which feature needs to be developed. And I think that is a big shift from what's been done in the past. And it's very much about how we develop our product, and it's product management strategy, basically, that we try to improve with this approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the biggest shift for a public broadcaster to how you operate and how you develop these new services compared to the old world where you've been pretty much in a traditional broadcast world. Are there any questions? Because we're getting pretty much to the end of the session for Pierre-Adrien from the audience. Please.
Thank you. Could you tell me a bit about the technology stack that you have been using and why you ended up using those technologies?
Of course. We have different layers that we're using. We don't have one single technical provider. So we basically, as our content goes through the different layers, we have a product it's called the Media Hub. It's been developed by one of our sister company called Swiss, where we do all the subtitling and put the metadata, etc. And this is basically where we organize our content. Then it's basically pushed to an online video platform that we use currently called Tura as our OVP. And then we have a middleware that we build in-house, and we push that to our family of applications that we have built ourselves internally. We are very keen onto controlling our own user experience development. We do a lot of user research and design internally, and we really try to get this. Then basically we have had used engines to reach to improve our technical reach, especially on the big screen. And we have a data platform to process our usage data and bring it back onto our analytics platform, as well as recommendation systems that we manage in-house. So we have different bricks like this. We do a lot in-house. But yeah, that's pretty much how we work. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for these interesting insights. I think that's
Pleasure.
It was pretty good to hear how Place went about going OTT. Thanks to Pierre-Adrien, and thank you all.
Thanks for having me.